Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Dana again, and today you're at Research Road. This is a weekly series where we go through science and tech news with a bit of dry humor. Then we answer some questions from y'all. Today is the 17th of December 2024, and on this date in 1903 in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, the Wright Flyer took to the air for the first time. It was the first powered airplane, and its first flight lasted 12 seconds. Later on in the day, the plane stayed airborne for 59 seconds. So, starting off with tech news, at this point, it looks like TikTok is probably headed out of the US market. This will likely mean billions in revenue for Meta and Google, but TikTok's CEO met with Trump and has signaled openness to stopping the proceedings. The US will start mandating that cars have alarms that go off if passengers in the rear seat don't fasten their belts. The New Jersey drone thing looks to be nothing. A combination of federal agencies released a statement that's almost identical to Bell's video on the topic, although Bell's video got a little into the psychology of what's happening and added some historical context. But the important part of the statement from the feds is,
"We have not identified anything anomalous and do not assess the activity to date to present a national security or public safety risk over the civilian airspace in New Jersey or other states in the Northeast."
And now on to space. Anthropologists are calling for the preservation of the human archaeological record on Mars. The idea is that the stuff left behind isn't space junk. It's the archaeological record that people will want to know about in the future. It's good to know that anthropologists don't see us going extinct anytime soon. Data has long suggested that the rings around Saturn are between 100 million and 400 million years old. That's young, comparatively speaking. The new study suggests that Saturn's rings are 4.5 billion years old, which is the same age as the planet. That's kind of anticlimactic. Now it's time to talk about the developing climate crisis. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released a report saying that the Arctic tundra is now a net source of emissions as it begins to emit more carbon than it stores thanks to warming and wildfires. The International Court of Justice is set to weigh in on whether countries fueling climate change have legal obligations for doing so. The U.S. military is incorporating climate change into its strategic assessments of African countries. The Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for African Affairs recently noted how water resources could become friction points for future conflicts, and how climate-stressed areas are fertile recruiting grounds for non-state actors. Japan sets a target of obtaining 40 to 50% of its energy from renewables by 2040. In the world of animals, the bald eagle is likely to become the national bird of the United States. You already thought it was, didn't you? I did too until recently. The bald eagle has been a national symbol since 1782, but it was never designated as the national bird. That will probably change soon because a bill to do that is heading to Biden's desk. Weeks ago, 43 monkeys escaped a facility in South Carolina. All but 4 were recaptured. The 4 that are still on the loose are reportedly still hanging out together, just doing monkey things and avoiding the traps put out to catch them. The boss over the facility has indicated that monkeys could be darted, but that would pose a risk to them. So they'll just wait for them to eventually go into one of the traps. Authorities in Idaho have said that thousands of wild birds have died from avian flu. Henry, a giant Nile crocodile in South Africa, turned 124 years old. He's helped make more than 10,000 baby crocodiles. In health news, the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development said that a commercial poultry production facility was impacted by avian flu. It did not disclose the name of the facility or the number of birds destroyed. As a brief aside, we've had a lot of questions about why the word destroyed is used in reporting when it comes to animals. It's the only widely known term that tells people that the birds are gone, that they weren't killed by the virus, and that they didn't enter the food supply. RFK Jr. says he's supportive of the polio vaccine. The mere fact that this is newsworthy should tell you something. Now let's dig up the past a little. The oldest known DNA from Homo sapiens in Europe once again revealed shared ancestry with Neanderthals. The period the two species came into Very close contact has been narrowed down to somewhere between 43,000 and 51,000 years ago. Interestingly, this corresponds to the period in which Neanderthals start to disappear. And now on to oddities. Scientists, researchers, and experts are sounding the alarm over research into what is known as mirror life and the potential dangers it poses to pretty much everything. Mirror life is a hypothetical form of life that is built using molecules that are the mirror image of those found in life on Earth. It's a concept often discussed in astrobiology as a possibility for alternative forms of life on other planets. Those sounding the alarm are concerned about the possibility of a mirror-life bacteria basically acting like an invasive species because immune systems would be unable to recognize it. And now, we're going to answer some of your questions.
Dana, I saw the comment about there being an internal debate on the team about the use of AI. I'm very curious what that debate looks like. I think it would probably be enlightening to hear the arguments being made. I'm on the side of it helping democratize information and production and lowering the barrier to entry in so many fields, but I know there's other points of view. I feel like hearing the other points of view might help me, and I'm sure others.
Sure. So you have the obvious ones about how AI is trained. That, of course, prompts the question of what actually qualifies as art. This gets a little heated over where the line is. For what we do, the text generation stuff is worthless because the models don't have information that is up to date to do news, but for older information, sure, it could help make it more accessible. Then you have the environmental questions, and then that feeds into how data centers are spurring a resurgence of nuclear power, which helps ready people to transition, which moves us away from fossil fuels. Then you have the reality that AI is already here, and it's not going anywhere. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle. For our main focus, those who love to put out bad information and misinform people for a profit, along with those who don't care about a more equitable world, are more than happy to use it. And they're already outproducing those who do care by a massive amount because they're backed by a multi-billion-dollar information ecosystem. They can just move faster to put out content, especially because they often dispense with silly notions like fact-checking. There's a lot of ethical considerations, and it isn't as one-sided as either side makes their side out to be. Personally, I think AI will be like every tech ever developed throughout history. The tech isn't innately good or evil, it's how it gets used.
Do you and the team ever have fun conversations about weird stuff at work? It seems like working with a bunch of people who debunk stuff constantly would lead to an environment where you don't get to have fun conversations entertaining the theoretical.
Yes, that's actually pretty common. We entertain all kinds of absolutely bizarre ideas, we just don't make them public. We really strive to put out the most accurate information we can. That means we don't get to speculate as much publicly, but there's a lot of it behind the scenes.
This might sound weird, but do you actually look like the illustrations?
That's an artist's rendition. I'm jealous of my own illustration. That looks like all the questions for this week. This week's quote is just a reminder that new technology and its implications aren't always understood well at the beginning and is attributed to Albert Einstein. There is not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. That would mean that the atom would have to be shattered at will. So that's all the data we have to date. Hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you again soon.